All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Joonas Vartola, and I'm a co-partner and creative lead at NorthernWorks. It's a Finland-based vehicle design, industrial design consultancy. Briefly about the background. So the Mika, my colleague, he's the founder, and we both share the vehicle design experience from these OEMs. Mika used to work for Ford, McLaren, and Opel briefly, and I did stints at Pininfarina, a few years at Mazda, and before coming back to Finland in 2016, I spent 5 years at Tesla, R&D in LA, California. Our extended team is fairly big, so we kind of always try to use specialists and really use like a task force for each special case. The client base is pretty international ever since we started, and many people wonder, is it really possible to do car design from Finland? Yes, it is if you have the right folks with you, the right support, and the right networks. Yeah, we've been fortunate enough to collect this type of pool of clients in the past, going from mentoring and to different types of companies, and this forms the core of our company: concept design, vehicle design, industrial design, and the other three disciplines supporting the core. So that was briefly about NorthernWorks, the background, and why I'm here. The reason you're probably here is to hear about my take on the future of the automotive interface design. At Tesla, I worked as an interior designer, but mainly as an exterior designer. But the team was so small, so wherever there was a fire, the designer had to just go there and put it off. It could have been camera integration, seat design, light design, wheel design, the whole body side development, but all in all, my focus was in exterior design. However, I had a very thorough role in the development of Model S, X, Model 3, and also supported some of those future platform and vehicle studies and programs. I think it's relevant to check where we are now, but how did we get here? Because when we talk about interface design, it has changed a lot, and like Tuomas mentioned, the levels of autonomy will really shape the way the interior of a vehicle will look and feel, and how you will control the vehicle in the future. The clarity is a word I get going back all the time, and when we look at the history of vehicles, there's the first Mercedes. It was all about clarity and sheer functionality. I think that was coincidental a little bit that time, because they didn't know better, because really it was a prototype, a running prototype. Somehow, like the Teslas are running prototypes. Those are like pioneer products, and they're blowing the way for the other companies and the whole industry to follow. But from interface point of view, this is clarity and sheer functionality. This is the Ford Model T, and the whole interface was just one mechanical device, the steering wheel, and you had a couple of knobs there, but that was your undivided, uninterrupted focus was on those very simple functions. Somehow, when we talk about engagement and how, that's a very relevant point about interiors and the interface design. How do you engage the user, the driver and the passenger with the vehicle? Somehow over the years, and when we talk about cars, it has channeled into something like this cluster, as this is a representation of putting all those controls in the same way it used to be in the past, but for maximum engagement. But HMI And with HMI, I mean the whole interface, not just the screen, not just like the buttons, but how do you interact with the whole interior of the vehicle? It should be empowering. It should harness the power of the vehicle, but also like link the driver or the passenger with the machine and really strengthen the usability. It shouldn't distract you from controlling the vehicle. And this is like a subtle sidestep there. When we talk about automotive grade, since you develop software for handheld devices, for different kind of systems, but in automotive grade, it means, an automotive context, we're designing something that it has to last years, several years. It's not just like a phone, you just like swap it every year or every 2 years, but this thing has to last time. And you guys probably noticed, like, you purchase a car, you rented a car, maybe it's 2 years or 3 years old. Some things look a little bit dated. You have this like box mounted to a dashboard there, it's covered with surfaces, and it's really not up to date with your phone or the devices you use at home. It's a clear challenge for UX design. And in my presentation, the UX, the user experience, the user interface, the human-machine interface, they're kind of linked. And since in automotive design, for OEMs, like original equipment manufacturers, a designer, interior-exterior designer, they look at the whole picture. It's not like focused on just one tiny detail, but trying to bring the elements together as a cohesive wholeness. So yeah, today it's very much focused on helping the driver like perform the main functions. But that's like considering when at the same time there's the levels of autonomy. Nowadays we control the car, we have the steering wheel, the buttons, and it's really straightforward. When we reach the next level, it will change. I'm going through a couple of examples to illustrate where we are. And this is the road, and I think this picture shows where we are not, we won't be in the coming years, because it's a handsome interior, it's a Porsche Panamera, drives well, everything finely appointed interior. However, it has over 106 buttons and switches. If you look back to the earlier stage of the presentation, I showed you the Ford T, the early Mercedes models, even the Ferrari F1 car. Everything was clustered. Was it well made? That's questionable, but it was clustered and focused and engaging. However, the Panamera, it's spread out all over the interior. Every single function has a chrome finish, has like glossy surface, is screaming, look at me. So that somehow the Porsche and most of the cars available right now, there are a few exceptions, I'll come to that later, are somehow echoing the past that's not really relevant anymore in terms of technology and usability. That sounds like it was the excess. It's like more is more is more kind of thinking, but actually it distracted your view of the road, and it distracted you from the main function, which is to enjoy the journey and make the journey as good as possible. Then came this is the cliché moment for a car designer. It's like, can you make it like this? And this is for interior designer nowadays, but also when I worked for Mazda from 2008 to 2010, working with the Mazda 6 interior, the chief designer was there holding his phone like, but can we make it like this? Also that like Tuomas mentioned earlier, like what was seen already like 4 years or 6 years ago, this was seen 10 years ago. Like, can we make it like that? But still, how many cars on the market right now offer you something even remotely to this level of finesse in terms of UI design, but also the product design of like the touch, the main user interface. Hardly. Okay, here's the Model 3 interior. This somehow epitomizes the previous stage where it was like, okay, can we make it like this? Can we just stuck the phone on the dashboard and cluster everything there? In the same way we did, well, it was done with the Ferrari. However, this is no nirvana. I mean, I worked on this product, Model 3, mainly on the exterior parts, and it's a handsome, minimalistic statement. With the UI, there are hierarchies and submenus and submenus, and somehow the design statement is bold, but the usability. However, compared to the Panamera, this is fairly closer to the like more natural way of interaction. Well, I'd say this is where we are now. You're focused on screens, and in screens, is it how big screen, how many screens, just like adding content to a screen, but does it really make the experience more engaging? I don't think so. So I think it's relevant to go from here, what's beyond this point, because that's important, like that's where the focus should be, like what's after 5, what's after 10, after 20 years, and in those 10 and 20 years, what Tuomas mentioned earlier, are really the key. When we, like Tesla Model 3 and S and X, and I think there's something from Volvo, are really at the level of 3 of autonomy. So the driver is required there all the time. However, the autopilot, the camera system, all the sensors can, at times, take control of the vehicle, but the driver is needed. I will briefly touch this point, which is like smart surface and structural electronics, because when we are moving beyond the screen and how we move away from the buttons, and we think about what's a natural way, like maybe the function should be where it is. So this is a rendering we did for Tactotech, a Finnish technology developer, a supplier, and the idea is that the functions should be integrated to injection molded plastics without like physical mechanical switches. And it could be an A-pillar, it could be in a headliner, it could be on the decorative panel of a dashboard. So it kind of opens new potential locations for the interface. So it really like forces us to switch away from the screen thinking I showed you earlier and something a bit more natural and unexpected. If there's a proximity sensor on the surface, integrated one, your hand approaches the surface of a door, of dashboard, and the function appears. And this definitely like opens up new opportunities for interface design. And like I said, it's not so like screen focused. This is an interior Mika did a few years ago for Bayer, and same thing here. Still a represented steering wheel there, but the screen is not like rectangle element floating there or mounted to the dash. Same technology Tactotech is providing, and there are companies like Kanadu and to mention few, the display elements could be integrated to the surfaces where they're relevant. So, the levels of autonomy, they can drive really surprising changes to the whole interior. And the following pages are to provoke and give some thinking, like food for thinking for you when you develop and how do you see car interiors in the future. Because like this is our junior designers project. It's like I think it's fantastic because level 4 autonomy means that there are certain situations where the driver is still needed, but it's essentially still a fully autonomous vehicle. This is a concept just like means that the interior starts changing because you are not required to sit at the driver's seat anymore, because the function of driver's seat is questionable at that point already. The better autonomy, the better sensor system, better safety systems, all the crash regulations will change, the way the cars communicate with each other, because the common package we have now, it's really based on the location of the engine, the firewall, the crash structures. But human driver is pretty flawed, and essentially is really bad at sensing the environment. Also, there's plenty of stuff here, so bear with me. Also, the AR, augmented reality, and with HU8, head-up display technologies, they will shift the attention away from the center stack to road. This is an example of the BMW, the next 100 years concept, just showing the level 4, where the steering wheel, as a main user interface device with the vehicle, is becoming secondary. It can be popped out at times where needed, but most of the driving can be done by the autopilot. Here's another example, interesting example of the Nissan concept. Also, the steering wheel will pop out at times, and this kind of illustrate what level 4 will mean. And when we go up in these levels of autonomy, the number of components in the interior will go down, definitely go down, and from a surface designer or interior designer or developer, software developer, it opens new possibilities. But the big challenge is what do you do with all that screen or all the content? There's a lot of content, but where do you put it, and is it relevant anymore? And here are some sketches illustrating when you don't have all the sketches we show here are by NorthernWorks, by the way, me and Mika, and the other images are from existing cars. But how much screen is enough? At level 4, you can add screens and you have multiple screens, but you're looking at the street. What do you put there? So I'm putting up questions and not just solutions here. There are different routes, but there are a lot of important questions. What do you do with the interior of a car in future? What is enough? What do you do with these huge screens there? And I think this concept from Byton is pretty well illustrating the fact that I think this will throw the link back the earlier stage of the presentation with the Panamera. Those hundreds of buttons now changed form into this gigantic screen. What do you want to see there? Don't you want to look at the road, or you want to use your own devices? So this is a little bit cumbersome from my point of view. Slightly biased there, since at Tesla, the focus was to minimize and simplify and cluster all elements into smaller groups and islands. Yeah. So quickly going through the stages happening in the vehicle architecture in a bigger scale, also to the end. So the AI starts taking control. There will be a bigger shift. And I showed you earlier the interior, but here, the Model X. But the form of a car is based on, like I said earlier, this packaging, the structure, the safety system, the engine. Where everything goes upside down, there are no drivers. Why should the car look as it used to be? There's no reason for that anymore. And at the same time, it will drive bigger changes. I think there will be interesting times in the future. Well, the future, yeah. It can be sooner than later, actually. The engagement, back to that question again. So when there's no steering wheel, when there are no buttons, maybe there are no screens anymore. So how do you make sure that the passenger still wants to be there? How to make the journey pleasurable? And I think game designers somehow have hit the point there in the past, because game designers, when in UX design, they try to make the player engaged for as long as possible. They're not trying to make quick links to perform the function. So let's imagine you're playing a game like Overwatch or something, and somehow the UI works that with like one single gunshot you can like eliminate the whole, like all the opponents there. Like that kind of like ruins the whole point of the game. So somehow bringing that thinking of keeping the passenger like excited there for a long time. And now we are moving further and further in the interior design and user interface to a different type of experience. Maybe it's more of a lounge. But how do you keep people excited in the lounge? Not quite sure, but there are ways to do that, both in terms of like surface design, volume design, but the user interface design. And I think bringing those elements back where I talked about during the presentation is the functions are where they're needed. They are like not intrusive and distractive, but natural. And I think there will be exciting future ahead of us, but it's going to look different than we are used to nowadays. So thank you. This was